Hello, everybody. This is the HDI Local Chapters live stream show. I'm your host, Tom Wilk, and I'm excited to have you here tonight to watch us either live or on a restream of Twitch or YouTube. Before we get started, I just want to mention our show sponsor, Robert Half. They are a talent solutions firm that help you, build your team and supply either workers, temporary, contract, or what have you. So you can check them out at roberthalf.com/technology. You can find good things on career insights, hiring practices, a lot of good things like that. A lot of information, not just about finding people or finding jobs. All right, so let's get on with the show. Our guest tonight, let me flip over here there we go. Our guest tonight is none other than the Ben Brennan. Ben was our very first guest when we started this show all the way back in 2020, Ben. That was November, I think. So, holy cow. So, I'll give a brief bio because if you don't know Ben by now, shame on you. But Ben is the author of Badass IT Support, founder of QSTAC, speaker, featured contributor of IT Support World, and named HDI Top 25 Thought Leader for the second year in a row. I was so proud to see you on there,
Ben. Baby.
Ben is one of my two very, very best friends in this world, and I met him through HDI, this wonderful community here. If you heard us talking on pre-show, he's been a personal mentor to me. He's helped me grow in my speaking career, and he's been pushing me to write a book like Badass IT Support. So, and just Ben is just an all-around just badass guy. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Hey, man. Obviously, we were talking already, but I'll say it for everyone else's benefit. It's a true delight. Anytime I get to talk with you, it puts a smile on my heart, man. So thanks for having me on.
Same. And you know how this goes. We only have like 15 minutes, so we don't want to. You and I could sit and talk forever, but let's get on with the show because the topic tonight is basically around courage. And you wrote an article for HDI Support World back in November, and I read it because it was you, and I had to read it, and it touched me so much that I had to write up a follow-up article on that's coming out in March. I think it's coming out at the beginning of March, kind of around that too, but in a different aspect. But you talk about courage. So first of all, I'm putting you on the spot, Ben. I know I don't do this a lot, I guess, but I'll put you on the spot because it was your article. Like for the audience, define courage, or even better, what you did, you also defined what courage was not. So talk to me a little bit about that.
I mean, and it's, I don't remember exactly how I framed it in the article, but I think courage, we all know it. It's like doing the hard thing in spite of consequences, right? So, it's doing the hard thing. And what I like to say, like the very first time we did this episode, or we did this show, I remember it was like breaking the rules. And I remember saying like, well, it's not like I like to break rules. It's like I like to do the right thing. And then sometimes that means breaking the rules. And courage is the same thing. To me, it's not like, oh, let's go be courage. I think you should start by doing the right thing, what the right thing is. And then courage helps you do that, right? Because sometimes doing the right thing will have consequences, and to your job, to your career, to your anxiety, to everything else. And it's really easy to not do that. And unfortunately, when you're a leader and you do the opposite, which is cowardice, or you fail to have courage, which is kind of a nicer way to say it, a lot of people suffer. And that's how some of the worst things that happen in IT and outside of IT happen, is lack of courage.
And I agree with you. And I have to think, as I was going over our show notes for today and reading your article, I thought, well, yeah, I totally get it. And then I went, I was sharing a couple experiences with you before we even started the show.
Yeah.
Like I failed courage sometimes because I fear repercussions. I'm not the top dog in my organization. And so, I mean, is courage something you have to do every single time, or if you fail to do it, are you you're a failure or a loser?
I mean, two things. First of all, like the reason that I'm kind of obsessed with courage is, but like I've lived in different countries and I've traveled around, and I was always fascinated about learning what was universal as a human and what was cultural, right? I grew up in Texas, which is its own special place, right? So, even leaving Texas, you're like, oh, what's universal and what was Texas? But, you've heard like nice guys finish last. There's a lot of character traits that are not valued. There's like some people like big, chubby people. Some people like skinny, real thin people, like all these different things are not valued. But universally, as much as I've studied and as far as I can tell, the only trait that I found that's universally respected is courage. So that I learned when I was traveling. I think like 2008 is when I really came to that realization. But like since then, to answer your question, I think the courage is not something that you do every day. Like it did not take, well, you might say it took courage to, get this haircut or whatever, but like it's really like courage isn't something you do every day. What you do every day are your habits. Courage is what you pull out.
That's true. Yeah.
When you're facing really hard stuff. I didn't cuss there. Did you see that? You're facing really hard stuff. That's what it is. When there are real consequences, and I'm sure we can all think about that in our lives. Like I'm thinking about specifically, like sometimes in my lives, back when I was an IT leader and, I had big teams, and it took a lot of courage. Almost always when there was something hard to do, like there were consequences to doing the right thing. And you can say, oh, I'm courageous or whatever, but it doesn't matter if you think you're courageous today on a podcast or whatever, a live stream. Are you courageous when there's crazy obstacles and your anxiety is through the roof and you know that it's not even going to work anyways and it feels impossible and you're going to lose your job and you've got kids to feed? Are you courageous on that time? And that's courage.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, on the flip side too, being a leader, you need to, so I'll just say it this way. Like, I was thinking back to an incident that happened to me, and one of my employees came to me and kind of called me out for something they was uncharacteristic of me. And it was actually, and I think of it now as you're saying it, I had to have the courage to do something I knew wasn't going to satisfy my people, but needed to be done. But on the flip side of that, he had the courage to come into my office and, for lack of a better way to say it, dress me down professionally for being a butthead. I'm trying to be nice too, being a butthead to what he thought I was for the team. So he had the courage, and I was a little, trying to frame my words right, mad, not trying to not say anything. So I was kind of mad about it. And like I tell my team, you have to give me a moment to think about what you say to me so my gut reaction sometimes, I shouldn't say my instant reaction sometimes is not the best, even though it's probably what I'm thinking, but I have to frame it better. And I came back to him later and I said, I'm sorry you didn't think you didn't like how I handled that. I said it had to be handled. Maybe I didn't do it the right way, but thank you for coming to me and telling me that. I didn't want to discipline him for having the courage to come to me to tell me I did something that he didn't particularly like.
Right. Yeah. No, and it's, it's not a video game where everything slides together. It is messy, and doing the right thing is often messy, and very often the person who does the right thing gets, fired, slaughtered, blacklisted, has stuff said about them. Like very often that is your reward for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But you should still do it because it's the right thing. And, I think that, it doesn't matter what your religion is. I think if you don't have a moral compass or live by some code of ethics, like you're just floating in the wind, and don't be a leader, man. Because when you're in the battle, which is like running a large organization, it's cloudy, it's confusing. If you don't have a compass that you can reach in your pocket and just by feel tell where you're going, you're toast, man. It's easy to be like, I will be courageous. But think about the hardest time you've ever had professionally, the hardest time in IT, and for your leaders, think about the time where, like you had two impossible choices, and it's a big deal. But even like at lower levels of IT, like if you want to take away from like the big swings, like think about the courage to try something new in IT. You know that I'm always like, being a pain in the butt and being like, innovate, do something new, challenge your ideas, be willing to think outside of the box and do something different, and that takes courage. If you can't or don't want to think about like the really crazy times, or if you've been lucky enough to not be in those huge, like HR, legal, and finance, and the CEO are all in the room, and you're walking in and your email just went off on your phone. I'm talking about a personal experience I had that took courage.
Yeah.
But tone it down, and let's talk about like that happens like once every couple of years. What's something that happens once a week? Like, let's say you get the opportunity to try, wow, I know that this metric that we're using we're basing decisions on it and it's not right. We're just And so these techs are gaming the ticket system, and it's BS, and we know it. But are you going to do anything about it? Well, my boss is a total, whatever, and they don't like it. They discourage that kind of thing, or they're not going to get it. There's your courage. There's your courage opportunity. And it happens. I mean, what are examples do you think of, like, people, that are a little less extreme, just kind of daily occurrences where you get a chance to either be the hero or kind of sink down
with the risk of saying this on live stream and be out there in the internet everywhere. In my current position, so I'm going to put myself out there. I have the courage to do this, Ben, and this is, one of the things that happens to me almost on a daily basis right now is, as I shared with you, I'm in charge of an engineering team now, both network and systems engineering, and the company I work for, my boss wants to innovate a lot to get us up to where we need to be, but I'm realizing now that I've had settled my feet on the ground and getting my, understanding what's going on, besides the imposter syndrome of not being an engineer in my former lives, is that we're innovating without planning and without thought to, like, how it affects the people behind us, like the customer, the other people. And so I've been thinking about this before, I'd say not long before, but before, I knew you were even going to be on the show this week. And after I read, like, what you and I were going to talk about, I need the courage to push back and say, we need to do this, but we need to slow down a little bit and plan, and not just, I guess I was thinking of an analogy to say, and I was going to say, it's like you telling me I need to go to California to one of the stores, go to the airport and figure it out. I don't know when the flights are. I don't know. Oh, I didn't bring any luggage. I don't know. It's like I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to the airport to go somewhere. I know where I'm kind of going, but I don't know how I'm getting there. And that's the way. So I think I need the courage to, and I've been thinking about that. And this has given me some boost. I told you, everybody out there, Ben, he does this for me. He helps me see things a lot clearer. And I think your message today is going to help a lot of people thinking about being courage and in everyday situations. You're right, not just the extreme thing.
Can I know we're short on time because this thing goes really fast, but one thing about courage, I think courage begets more courage. And if you want to think about, I know when we first talked about the vision for this show that you're doing, that you've done an amazing job on, you were like, let's get on Twitch and let's reach some people that maybe aren't in tech, or some people that are getting in tech. Let's reach the younger generation. Think back your first time in, like, having a real job, and there's bosses, and there's like coffee, and there's like HR, and you're learning how to do that. If I had a leader like you who was like, oh, you know what, I'm conscious of this, and I'm going to intentionally be courageous, I'm going to model that opens the door for them as something that a leader does. If they go through and they see, like, especially people that are listening that are like VPs, or you have like the fancy titles, like, you see a VP and you're like, you see him or her, cower down or just play politics and not do the right thing when it's inconvenient, or when they don't think they can come out on top. When you see that, it tells you, oh, if I want to get to VP, I've got to be super political. And so it begets more of this, like, cowardice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just, it just kills me, man. Just kills me.
And on that, I was just thinking that too, like, how many times, Ben, in your career, because especially when you're a practitioner in the IT world, like, you used that courage and you did what you need to do, and people above you went, oh, that's right, that's exactly what we needed to hear. How often are we afraid because we think we're going to get yelled at, or we think we're going to get pushed back on, or yelled, like, and it's not necessarily reality, right? It's just our perception sometimes.
Yeah, that is true. Sometimes you get lucky and you do it, and you think you've already owned up to, this is going to ruin my career, and I'm updating my LinkedIn as I schedule this meeting. And then, and then it works good, because everyone, we were talking about it being universal. Everyone respects courage. If someone walks into a meeting and is the most courageous MFer that you've ever seen, and she's like, listen, no, this is BS, and we're going to do it this way because it's the right thing to do, and I'm going to give you the rest of the time for this meeting to figure that out, and she storms out the door, nobody with a soul doesn't respect that. You know,
Ben, you say that, and I'm gonna, talk about your podcast that you have out there. Is it IT After Hours? I think is that right? Because you haven't posted one for a while. But anyway, I remember
season 2 is coming out. Season 2 is coming up.
And I remember being on your show, and we talked about one of those episodes that I had where I had just had enough, and I told a college professor, you have to listen to Ben's podcast to hear more about that.
Yeah, you guys, Tom told an important person to maybe go F himself, essentially. You guys should check out that podcast.
It wasn't essentially, it was exactly what I said. And I just was so agitated and irritated that this person had the gall to come in and like harass my staff that and for those of you that aren't in the higher education world, this was an emeritus professor. This is somebody that's been with the university for like 40 years. And the funny part is I went up to my dean and I told him I did it, and he patted me on the back and said, "Great job."
Yeah.
Well, Ben, so we're almost out of time here. So before we go, any last words of wisdom on courage that you want to share with the group?
No, I would say just read the chat. There's been some really cool comments in the chat. Like Heather said something about courage fueling innovation. I saw Amy say some stuff. Just do yourself a favor, read through the chat if you can when you're rewatching this, and take it. But at the end of the day, like, it does feel good. We were talking about, I just got into Muay Thai. It like changed my life. I just started taking care of myself, yada, yada. It feels really good, but I didn't do it to feel good. I did it because it was something that I wanted to do, and it was the right thing. Courage, do it because it's the right thing to do. And every once in a while you get the nicey where, you get applause and the slow claps and everyone loves it. But that's not why you do it. You do it because it's the right thing to do and you're a leader. And if you're not a leader that does that, then someone else is going to come and not have courage. And so just do the right thing as a leader. And at the end of the day, you'll at least feel good about yourself, and, you won't be a bad leader. That was a really anticlimactic thing, but you get it. Be courageous, have a great night. And this was really fun, Tom. Thank you for your time.
All right. So, before we go, I just want to say thank you again, Ben. And for those of you that don't know Ben, check out his book, Badass IT Support, because this, Ben, to me was a lot of courage. What you did you're kind of an innovator and a disruptor. And this shows the courage that you had to get to that point.
That book, I will take credit. That book did take courage, because I was pretty sure everyone was going to like destroy me afterwards. And some people like wanted to kill me, but most people were very accepting of it. So
dude, it was awesome. I told you I read it on the plane when I didn't even know you when you were advertising this, and I read it on the plane, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. So, well, Ben, thanks, and we got to catch up, and hopefully you get to be down in Vegas in May. For those of you that don't know, so HDI is doing Support World Live in Vegas, and I think it's May like 15th or 17th, something. I think it's 15th. Right. It starts. So check it out, and we'll see you all next week. Again, Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.